While Ayn Rand was probably the most popular philosopher of the last century, John Rawls was probably the most influential. And his major contribution was a theory of the just society, which, in order to establish objectivity, began with a thought experiment called the veil of ignorance, in which us immortal spirits, to go into thought experiment mode, were to imagine ourselves up above the earth, perhaps on the moon or the stars somewhere, and looking down at the bodies of mortal men on earth as though through a veil, as though through a screen of anonymity, by which we did not know which body, which set of circumstances, which life we would inherit when we went down to live our lives as mortal beings. Now, John Rawls said that from this, the rational person, looking at different societies and the way that they were constructed, would most want to be in a society, that the society would be the most just, in which the randomness of the distribution, where they might end up, looking at this, they would be okay with, or at least most okay with, being among the least of the members of the society, among the poorest to the sickest, the most diseased and unlucky. Is an idea because we're risk-averse creatures. We would want to that we would want to be in a society wherein the least among us were being taken care of, on the assumption that we could have been those people. There's a couple of things wrong with this. Um, and when I first heard this, when I was first had this used against me in an argument, my first reaction was, well, why should I imagine that I'm someone who I'm not? I'm me, you know. Um, this isn't a very powerful argument when you just state it, but where that argument comes from for me is the idea that we do have, if not free will per se, then at least some responsibility to our own actions and the ability to act. That we are not as mechanistic as we are. Our understanding of our own mechanistic nature is a part of that machinery. And the belief in our own free will is a crucial element to human well-being. The responsibility of our own actions, both positive and negative, taking responsibility for our successes as well as our failures, is crucial to any functional society. And what the presumption of the veil of ignorance is, in its assertion that we could have been anybody, and that we should empathize with people whom we could have been, were it just merely for different circumstances, rather than a function of our own choices, is the absolute negation of that responsibility that we call free will. I'm not talking about the kind of pure free will that Sam Harris criticizes, for example. I'm talking more about the basic, I guess the technical phrase is compatibilist free will of responsibility that Daniel Dennett speaks of. Now, um, there is another element to this, and that is the way that we come to opinions and beliefs where politics are concerned. We are not so objective and so rational as we often like to imagine. And of course, John Rawls knew this. It's why he came up with the veil of ignorance, arguably. Um, if you are strong as an individual, if you are muscular, then you will claim that strength is a virtue. You will claim that strength is an objective good thing that people should pursue. Not necessarily because you've thought through the philosophical implications of accepting the virtue of strength, but because if strength is accepted as a virtue among the people around you, then your social status goes up. We're all on Maslow's hierarchy. We're all vying for social power and prestige and rising through the ranks of those around us. We're tribal pack animals like that. It's who we are as people. If you are weak, then and strength is accepted as a value among the people around you, then your social value goes down. You might very well find yourself saying, well, strength is overrated as a virtue. It's really what's on the inside that counts. You know, But there's a converse to this. And that is that when there is a value that's accepted by those around you, say, to stick with our analogy, strength is a virtue, or intelligence, could be anything, could be generosity, whatever it is, you will find that you will feel pressured, perhaps consciously, perhaps subconsciously, to conform to that standard. As Rawls suggested, we are not so in control of our own behavior and motives as we may think. We are mechanistic, after all. And even though we are responsible for our actions, the what other people value can push us to behave subconsciously towards the things that are valued by those around us. If strength is valued, I might find I'm going to the gym more. I don't know, I need to get in shape so I can climb back up that ladder and be accepted as one of the guys, or maybe among the ladies if I'm so inclined. So, and if strength is denigrated, if it's just an overrated thing, it's not a big deal, it takes a lot of time to work out. It takes time and effort and pain. It takes pain to get in good shape. So, if strength is denigrated, if strength is not valued, you'll find that the whole of society becomes weaker, because why should they go become strong? Why should they go be generous if generosity is not valued? Why should they care about civics if being civic is not valued? There's a cost and a benefit to all of our time allocations, and what those around us value is as much a factor as the characteristics that we already have that we instinctively want to defend. How does this link into John Rawls' thing? Well, what does John Rawls' veil of ignorance focus on? It says we should look first and foremost to the least and the poorest among society, and what we are doing for those people. It is a philosophically minded civic focus, a laser homing in on the lowest of the low. And it has focused the conversation around civics in the United States, and arguably in other places as well, like Marxism, on classes of people who are held to be oppressed. Though Rawls doesn't speak of them in those terms. He's more general, as he is more general in his methods, which is very helpful, because when Marx spoke of methods, it all but disproved the entirety of his philosophical and economic notions, because they proved to be so drastically counterproductive to what he had ostensibly intended them to do. Rawls doesn't make that mistake. He's very general. He's very vague about methods of resolving this. He merely states the beginnings, the where we should start. I don't think that the methods are required to see the problems with this, though. When you focus on the most impoverished and the poorest and the weakest and the sickest, you de facto, in a de facto fashion, defend them. The mechanistic explanation of human nature, completely negating human responsibility for our own actions, is a de facto defense of those people as well. Now, it's not that we should not help these people. It's not that they should not be uplifted, especially the people in our general proximity, in our families, in our local communities. We should absolutely help these people. But the complete recentering of civic discussion and what the just society looks like around the poorest and around the weakest and around the sickest and around the lamest in the technical sense, accomplishes in a secular form what Christianity did theologically. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the poor, for when I am weak, then I am strong. Nietzsche pointed out over 100 years ago the dangers of this, how the philosophy of pity makes more pity. It is valuable, it is socially valuable, because you get attention when you are a victim, when you are poor, when you are weak, when you are lame and oppressed. Under a Rawlsian philosophy, you become the center of attention. What can we do to uplift the poor? What can we do to do this and to do that and the other? It is an uplifting of the poor for the sake of uplifting the poor, more for our own better, feeling good about ourselves, in pursuit of this just society. It makes us feel like we're moral people. Though the effect isn't necessarily to uplift the poor, and communism being an excellent example of that. But it also defends that, and as we said before, if the virtues of being productive are not held by those around you, if the virtue is instead how generous you are with the poor, then why be productive? Why not be generous to the poor? It's that latter one that is more valued. And so there's a it's no coincidence that John Rawls, being perhaps the godfather of the term social justice and the concept of social justice, has, however indirectly, authored all of these self-proclaimed victim groups that are now springing up and proliferating around the country. It is a weakening of the country, both metaphorically and physically. Um, and it is an impoverishing. When you make a virtue of pity, everything wants to become pitiable and soon becomes pitiable. So, in response to the dangers of Rawlsian justice, which, in its attempt to be objective, uh, eliminates personal responsibility and uplifts that which is low and ignores that which is good and has quality, I propose an alternate veil of ignorance theory, one in which we, immortal spirits, to return to the language of thought experiments, are to look down through this screen of anonymity at the mortals down below and think, if I could be anyone, who would I want to be? If I could be anyone down there, which people would I want to be? And instead of focusing on who you wouldn't want to be, focus on that which you admire, that which is good, that which is beautiful and noble. And look to those people and to how they live. And to, instead of creating a society that uplifts those who are low, look at look for a society that encourages and uplifts that which is good, that which encourages the people who are living the kinds of life you would want to live and would facilitate you, in whatever form you go down there in, to live a life like that. I think that would be more productive for your own life, and it still is objective in the same way that Rawls, at least to the extent that Rawls is.